You want to know what the biggest problem I have with public adjusters and attorneys on our side? Well, you're going to find out in just a minute. That's what this episode is about. I'm Matt Mulholland, and that's Remington Huggins. Let's get into this shit.
Matt, let me ask you a question here. What got you into this industry?
The economy tanked in 2007. The Great Recession got me into the industry because it was somebody brought me into roofing and sold me on the idea that this was recession proof, and I had little kids at the time, so I needed something. You know, I was knocking on doors selling pressure washing about that time, cleaning roofs with chemical cleaning of stuff. I wasn't in the industry, but I was dealing with roofs and different things as well. I had my own rig that I had built up, but I was always keeping my eye open for business opportunities.
Yeah.
But when that recession hit, it did a number on us.
What were you doing before the recession hit?
I had that pressure washing company. That's when it hit, and then at some point during the recession, when people stopped paying for pressure washing because it's a luxury item, I ended up selling cars for a while.
So you got into the industry, if you will, you know, being a contractor, a roofer in the restoration, 2008-ish?
2008, I became a roofing sales guy for a company. That same year, I started my own roofing company. Within 6 months of getting into the industry, I started my own firm, my own company. You've
been in the restoration insurance type game for 17 years, roughly, give or take.
If that's what the math works out to.
Let me ask you this. What is the biggest difference you've seen since you began to 2025?
So, insurance adjusters that we used to be on site had the authority to say yes. They had the authority to make the decision. They were the guy that we were negotiating with. They were the guy that we were presenting the information to, getting them to apply coverages, and negotiating the final settlement with. It slowly changed from that to meeting with a lot more third parties, and the desk adjusters started being the ones that had the authority, and the guy that was in the field was just a glorified photo taker, almost like a ladder assist, even though they were adjusters. It was a slow progression, but it became harder and harder over time to get information to the right hands. If I want to actually make a difference on a claim, I need to convince the person that has the authority to make a change, not just whoever's in front of me at that time. I can, in a way, make that happen by getting this person to write some notes that I know this person's going to read and help me out. But it's harder to do that. So it's completely changed how you approach a claim in order to win with this particular scenario. But that's the biggest difference. They deny things a lot more often than they used to, and it has a lot to do with that because the guys that were meeting with us on site in 2008, 2009, they made more money if they paid for the roof or paid for the claim. They were paid a percentage of the claim amount. It was on a tiered scale, but they were honestly paid more if they bought it. That doesn't really happen as much anymore.
Isn't that how it's supposed to be? You have a licensed adjuster from the insurance company, comes out to the property, actually does their own inspection of the property. Mm-hmm. They're an adjuster, so they know the insurance policy, and then they make the decision. I mean, why has it, and I agree with you, and I remember they could write checks in their truck for claims.
We used to get a lot of checks on site. It was almost a negotiation tool for them. Well, I'll write a check on site right here if you agree to this.
Yeah.
Okay. Sold.
Sounds good.
You know, I'll accept $1,000 less than what my estimate was or whatever it is. If you're going to write a check on site and I don't have to fight you for 4 months, I'm down. Let's go. Policies have really shorted up though too. I mean, they've gotten a lot stricter than they used to.
Right.
A lot stricter.
it just, the hoops that you have to go through in 2025 versus 2008, 2009, it's just a drastic difference.
It is. Well, there's a lot of different language in the policies that force you to prove stuff in a different way. Deductibles have gone up tremendously, so people are paying out of pocket more. There's so many reasons that things have gotten a lot worse. It's harder than it was in 2007, 2008, 2009, by a lot. It would be very, very different. My son, who's 19, Liam, just started working for a roofing company.
Hey, Liam.
And I'm super proud that he's doing this. But he's just started working for a roofing company. He's giving me some ideas of how things are going. He's working in the Atlanta market. And everybody that is on the sales team is struggling to get sales right now in that market because it's so saturated. Everybody's knocking on doors. So it's hard to do that job. But that's another difference that occurred. In 2008, 2009, if I knocked on a door, no one had ever heard of the fact that you could have insurance pay for a roof. Now, if I knock on a door in that same neighborhood, everybody's had 15 roofers knock on that door to say the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that have to be overcome. It's not just the insurance company. The sales is harder, too. Everything's harder. It's still a very viable business, but it's a lot harder.
Agreed. I mean, let's push rewind and go back, what did we say? 17 years. And you were told that insurance companies are making coverage calls when they've never put foot on the property. You would have said no way.
No, you're right. No, I'd have been very up at arms about that situation for sure. It still pisses me off now. It feels like it can't be true. How could a desk adjuster make a coverage decision where they don't agree with the field adjuster that was out there?
Or not even let's just say not even a licensed adjuster's step foot on the property.
Maybe
IA or
just
not. You have a ladder assist that's taking photos, that's getting paid $175 a roof to run around, take photos, and then they just make the judgment call. Like, to me, when I started in this industry, I thought that I would have been like, wait, what?
Yeah.
No way.
It's ridiculous.
No way.
You would have had that report thrown out, I'm sure. Never been on site?
How?
Yeah,
trust me.
You would win that all day.
Trust me. When we get those claims, I love deposing that desk adjuster.
Oh, I bet.
You're telling me not one representative from the insurance company has stepped foot on this property? Are you kidding? Is this the truth? How long ago did this loss happen? Three years ago, and you still haven't had one representative step foot on this property.
But you're still denying it.
And you're still denying this claim.
That's crazy.
So when it gets to that point, I mean, we have to hammer them, and we do.
Seems like it'd be easy to hammer them. How much education have they had?
Ladder assist?
No, the desk adjuster.
It varies. I can tell you this. The majority of them don't have any experience when it comes to actual what it takes to restore a property at all.
I believe that.
At all.
This is somebody that's probably done admin work most of their life.
Yeah.
Not actually picked up a hammer or anything. Not anyone that's been in the construction field, right?
Exactly.
This is someone that's been taught how to look at a photo. Hague has a desk adjuster training program. So
everybody out there, it's Hague, not Hag. Okay,
I don't mind if you call it Hag. It sounds more reasonable to me, but it is Hague.
I don't correct people when they say it, but I'm just Hag it is. I think that's funny.
It is funny. Bunch of hags.
Hey, think about this. Now, one specific carrier in mind, but I know a lot do this. As soon as a claim is filed, they hire a construction consultant to go out. They hire a independent adjuster to go out. And then they hire the same exact engineering firm. And it's the same exact IA, and it's the same exact building consultant on every single claim. Mm-hmm. Think about how many hoops that insured has to go through for that to be approved. If there's a dispute, which with this one carrier, there's always a dispute. But think about that. I mean, and what I think they're doing is that if there is a wrong decision, the carriers are shedding liability by hiring these third parties. Hey, this is their opinion. Oh, and guess what? It was the building consultant's opinion, it was the IA's opinion, and also the engineer's opinion. For a policyholder to overcome all of that, you know how expensive that is? They don't want to deal with it.
No, it's easier for them to follow. But this is the point. That's the McKenzie model.
Explain the McKenzie model in like a 30-second brief here.
30 seconds, deny everything. When a certain percentage of people fight against it, deny most of them as well, but you're only going to pay the squeaky wheels, and you're going to use third parties to make claims decisions so that you're not liable for that decision, and you can offload the idea of bad faith onto a third party. If I reasonably relied on what this engineer stated, why would I disagree with what an engineer stated? They're an engineer. They're the smartest people on the planet. They made toilets that work in space, for God's sake. How would I ever disagree with what an engineer said? And that makes sense. So that's part of the McKenzie model. The McKenzie consulting firm has taught insurance companies to do these types of things. Delay, deny, defend. You've heard this before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Jay Feinstein wrote a beautiful book about it. And it's very, very pertinent. And it's happening with all the major carriers. All the ones that have employed this idea. It's a bean counter issue. They know that a certain amount of people will just not fight back. And then the people that do, eventually, they will give up too. And eventually, you're going to get to a point where you have to sue them to gain the benefits, but there's so few people that will sue that they know that they will come out ahead in the end.
Absolutely. I didn't know the McKenzie model had to do with third parties as well.
They use third parties in order to make that liability call. If a third party says that there isn't damage and you reasonably rely on that third party to make that assessment, then you aren't the one that made that assessment. So you're not the one acting in bad faith. You reasonably relied on an expert's opinion. Happens to be that these experts are only hired by insurance companies, and it seems like they have very biased information. They're omitting a lot of information. They're saying things in such a way that the insurance company is able to use that to deny claims. And they're very specific about it. So that McKenzie model is there, and the carriers are employing it, and they are able to reduce their outgo as a result. So it's a brilliant plan.
I have to say this. It prevents, and when I have a client, and I resolve their claim, at the end, I literally tell them, I'm like, hey, good for you. Congrats. You are a small percentage that didn't put up with the BS and agreed to hire an attorney and go the length and beat the insurance company. Good for you. Seriously.
It takes a special kind of person, though,
pat
doesn't it?
on your back.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially after they have building consultant reports, IA reports, engineering reports.
I think most people, the kind of person that wouldn't want to be rude to somebody else, even if it means that they kind of get tread on a little bit, that's the kind of person that would give up. And that's most people. The peacekeepers of the world would not file a suit. And that's most people.
Yeah.
And they count on that.
And, and they're convincing on the other side. Having these engineering reports. I had a phone call last week with a potential client, and he said, well, I mean, did you read their engineering report? Like, do we have a good case at all? Like, I told him, I said, if I listened to any of their engineering reports, I wouldn't have a job. I don't garbage. Like, yeah, great. You have an engineering report. And then, there's times where the desk adjuster hasn't been elevated to a defense counsel yet. And I'm talking to the desk adjuster.
Yeah.
They're like, have you read? Do you know we have an engineering report? I was like, I always say, I'm like, I honestly do not care.
Yeah.
At all.
I mean, there's so
I
much
do not
crap
care
in
that you have an engineering report.
Let me give a shameless plug real quick while I'm at it, because listen to this bull, the L2TB consulting side of it, our consulting side. We do help people with engineers reports. We'll do a review of that engineer report. I've got an engineer, Chad Williams, that will actually write something and say whether or not the engineer report has been successful in some way. They'll do a full peer review of that report, stamp off on it. We can also just do a consultation where we go through the report with you and give you ideas of what we think you ought to do next. This is something that we do for contractors, public adjusters, and policyholders. So you can find all that information on listentothisbull.com. And just go to the consultation page. You'll find that.
And this is not
shameless plug.
This is not a shameless plug because I don't have any ownership interest. But if you attend one of Matt's classes about I think it's like tactics of battling an engineering report, something of that effect.
Defeating unethical engineer tactics.
That's exactly what I said. So I'm telling you, you're going to grab nuggets from this. And they're very effective. And the language that they use where they're avoiding saying certain things that he points out, it's brilliant. So it's not a shameless plug because, again, I have no dog in the fight. But you need to do that. Let me ask you this. Back in 2007, 2008, and when I got into this industry over a decade ago, having a carrier hire an engineer was really only when it was going to go legal.
I don't know if I ever met with an engineer in 2008 up to 2010. But I can tell you at the peak of All Good Adjustments, my PA firm, my entire job was to meet with engineers every single day. And sometimes it would be 3 engineers a day, because it became such a prominent strategy for them to deny claims, was to get someone to go out and say, well, that's not hail, that's wear and tear. Or that's not damaged at all because it doesn't meet their functional definition of damage, even though it's not what the policy says. There's so many things that they do to just obscure facts or omit information or just not use the correct policy language and allow the carrier to misinterpret what they are saying or not apply their policy correctly. There's so many tactics that they have, different defenses that they use. All that is taught in that class.
Yeah.
But yeah, it became a very normal thing for them to hire an engineer on claims, especially if there was a PA that was giving them a lot of heartache.
Yeah. It's very rare that we get a file as the law firm where there's not an engineer on the file at that point. It is extremely rare.
I mean, if it's going to litigation, they almost need that to establish their basis for that denial fully.
Yeah. But I mean, 10 years ago, when they knew it was going to go legal, or I send in my LOR, they would send an engineer out. Now the engineer's already on there before I even touch the file. Like, it's just, that's what they're doing. And it seemed like you said, 2008, you rarely met with an engineer. Fast forward to, which is what, 2016-ish, 2017?
Between 2017 and 2020.
You were meeting
my
3 engineers.
My primary job was meeting with engineers.
3 engineers a day.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible. That's crazy.
It is.
And that's a short period of time.
It is.
That is a short period of time.
Well, I mean, it slowly progressed to that. But that's when that became my primary job. That and sales. But, it's a very different world now. That's part of the McKenzie model, is to get a third party, someone that only gets hired by insurance companies so that you have a little bit of say in what it is that they put in their writing. I've met with lots of engineers who have told me that their department that reviews their paper, their internal review department, they're like selling them on changing the language that's in this to say something a little bit different or take a word out or change it this way. And most of the engineers that are hired to do this, when they're brand new, they don't know any better. They don't know that saying it this way actually hurts a policyholder or obscures the facts. They're also taught to identify this proximate cause completely wrong, almost using a liability definition for proximate cause, which is something that I teach in classrooms, and I don't think we should do this on a podcast because it's just a little bit complex that I would need some slides. But they're taught to do things wrong, and it takes them a long time to get to the point where they realize that. And once they start to realize that and they start to fight back, they realize that they start to get less work. And they start to get less work because they're fighting back because they realize that it's wrong. Then they might switch sides. But they all have NDAs. I've seen engineers that have told me that the report that they wrote was not the report that was submitted to the carrier, but their stamp was still on it. There are things that are happening with that third-party reports that is very, very inappropriate. Now, that doesn't happen every time. And most adjusters, when they hire an engineer, they think they're doing the right thing by the policyholder. We're going to... I can't seem to get this past my management. Let me get an engineer involved. The engineer will be able to say that there is or isn't damage. If the engineer says there's damage, then my management will approve it. So let me give you this, Mr. Policyholder. Let me give you the best possible situation that I can. They don't realize that they're actually doing a disservice to the policyholder by sending out someone that's extremely biased against them. So the adjusters that are doing this, they don't know that it's a problem. The engineers that are sent out don't know how their reports are being utilized. They just think that they're being unbiased in writing these things, but they don't know that the language that they're using actually hurts policyholders. And all of these little pieces that are doing the job that they're taught to do in the specific way that they're taught to do it lead to a claim denial, and none of them know that it's happening. They don't know what their role is. Not until they have the wool pulled off of their heads, and it's...
I was going to say at some point...
eye-opening.
At some point... They would figure it out.
When they meet me.
All right. So we talked about changes on the insurance carrier side for the last 17 years, give or take. You say we're unbiased, right? We
are biased.
Hey, we're fair. And I think that's a fair statement.
I think that we're fair.
We're fair.
I would like to say that. I want it to be true. I think that it would really take someone, not us, to be able to evaluate that in reality.
I think 90% of opposing counsels that I go against would say I'm fair. And that we get stuff done.
I can tell you that I know that insurance companies, for the most part, thought that I was fair. Yeah. I had this one claim where an adjuster came out, first time I ever met him, and he said, before we said anything else, "Hey, I know who you are. I'm buying this roof." I said, "What?" He's like, "I just read the file, and it says you're the only honest public adjuster in Georgia, so I'm buying this roof." I was like, "That's awesome. But also, maybe you want to do it on a different claim because I got just about nothing on this one." This is damn it. Let me prove to you that you're right. You still bought it.
All right.
Anyway, so I think that I'm fair too, but keep going.
Okay. Grand scheme of things here. 2008, 2009. You meet the actual licensed adjuster at the property. They're striking checks right there and making coverage decisions. Fast forward 17 years later. They have all these third parties going out, taking a look. A lot of times the adjuster that's making the coverage decision is sitting at a desk and never even steps foot on the property. They have now cosmetic exclusions. They're in different states. They're trying to limit appraisal. Like, it is just all funneling to it being a fight.
Yeah.
I mean, and it takes a special person, whether you're, an advocate as a contractor, a public adjuster, or an attorney, even experts on the plaintiff side, for us to fight this, because it is a snowball effect, and all of these elements coming into play is making it even less and less for insureds to actually get what they deserve under the policy and actually take the steps of hiring a public adjuster, going to litigation, fronting money. So that's on the insurance side of things. I'm just going to ask one question because I want to be fair. We just go back to being fair here. What is the biggest change that you hate, or what's the biggest thing that you hate or dislike on our side of the fence?
I think that most public adjusters and contractors are complete assholes to the insurance carriers. We're a bunch of dicks. I think it leaves a sour taste in the mouth of the carriers. We almost feel like we want to fight against every possible thing that other person says instead of trying to work with them. Most of the time that adjuster is able to be worked with, and it's almost necessary to do that to get coverage now. But instead, every time they say do this or do that and we'll give you something, please provide this. Why do you need that? You don't need that. I'm going to fight against everything. You know, we've said in a few of the episodes from this podcast this year that there are battles that are worth fighting. There are hills worth dying on. But the vast majority of them that we're fighting aren't hills worth dying on. We're dying on them anyway. And we're wasting time for policyholders. I also think that most public adjusters have a hard time giving up on a claim and handing it off to an attorney when they should have done that months ago. And I am also part of the problem on that. When I was a PA, I had a hard time handing it off. Even if I've done my full job, I would justify it by saying, I can send this in, this one last email, this will make a difference. I never really did. But I kept thinking that I would. So you have to establish where that line is. When you've done all of these things, then you've done your full job, and if there is still a dispute, then this is what you need to, at that point, realize that you're in a dispute at this point, and you have to find something else, either alternative dispute resolution or hand off to an attorney to go to litigation. But the biggest thing I hate is the fact that we're just a bunch of assholes.
When a public adjuster writes a novel email, when I say novel, I'm talking about long, and they are just personally attacking a desk adjuster on the other side.
Yeah.
Like when has that actually been successful?
You know, maybe in
I can tell you this.
It has to be every now and then, or they wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Every now and then, just like kind of like, you know, the whole data discovery thing, every now and then it might work now. But, and yes, it would. But I'm telling you, on a consistent basis, it doesn't help. Mm-mm. It doesn't help.
I mean, when it gets into your hands, if it goes in front of a jury and you have a letter that says something awful about the carrier's adjuster. There's one letter I keep thinking of, a student of mine, and I know you work with this guy too, and he's completely changed how he works, and it has a lot to do with this one conversation that I had, but he was so proud of it, about this one letter that he had that he sent to the carrier. He sent it to me, and he was really proud of it. And the very first sentences in this letter were, "Oh, congratulations, did you write that yourself?" I'm not going to say his name, but I was like, dude, what the fuck is this? You can't write that. And he didn't expect that answer from me. He expected me to clap him on the back and be like, yeah, get him, Tiger, or something like that.
Beat that war drum. Heck yeah.
You know, the rest of the letter was him being an asshole. He was right. The stuff that he said wasn't wrong. He was correct. But the way that he did it was so off-putting. No one is going to read that and go, well, he's correct. He got me good. No one's going to read that. They're going to be so defensive that they're going to fight back against all of it. Use some psychology, guys. These are people
I was going to say, they're humans.
They're humans. Why are you such a dick to another human?
And it's a small circle. You're going to see him again.
You definitely are going to see him.
You're going to see him again. I can tell you this. This is the truth. I've had opposing counsel tell me that they're not settling this case at the moment because the adjuster for the insurance company is telling him, this PA gave me a hard time. I want to give them a hard time. So you do whatever you need to do.
Wow.
So it's a trickle down
that's a
effect
shitty situation because the policyholder has nothing
because
to
that's
do with it,
you losing sight.
right?
Right.
You know,
So
you almost understand, but at the same time, you're like, dude, you still have to take care of the policyholder. This is your client. But the public adjuster should be taking care of the policyholder the right way, too. This is such a... The thing I hate the most on our side is we're a bunch of assholes.
and look, you can argue with somebody, but you don't have to be disrespectful.
You don't have to be condescending.
You don't.
You don't have to be disrespectful. You can be kind.
And you will be more successful if you are not disrespectful. Period. You will.
You can be direct without being a
Right.
dick. You can be. You know, it's just... You need to learn some tact. And it makes a huge difference on claims. And that same guy that wrote that letter has changed how he works with carriers to be a lot more willing to work with them. And he is a lot more successul.
Right.
A lot more successful.
Right.
He talks to me all the time about how he's changed. He shows me letters that he's writing now. And he's like, man, thank you so much. You know, that I had to basically slap him in the face about this. Stop doing this. He didn't expect that. But he took it to heart, and he actually changed, and it made a difference. And he gets along with adjusters and carriers, and they call him with questions. They used to call me with questions about other PAs because I was a person to them.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's the real answer. That's the thing I hate the most about our side. We got to stop being dicks. Stop it.
Love it. Love it. And, you know, put your ego to the side.
Yeah.
Don't fight everything. You know, if they say the sky is blue, don't say it's red. You know,
if they say it's red, say, well, I disagree with that,
yeah.
but let's talk about the thing that matters over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop getting lost in the weeds. You don't have to fight every little thing. It's not necessary, right?
It's not. Not at all.
There is a argument that needs to be made, and that's the only one you have to worry about.
Right.
So,
and it's the best for the policyholder
I agree.
at the end of it. I mean, you know, I've said this before. You only have a certain amount of bandwidth per claim. Do you want to waste that resource of that bandwidth on arguing over a reservation of rights, or do you want to do it on scope and coverage?
that's a great example.
So,
Yeah,
well,
I agree.
Hey, Matt, thank you for the insight of the 17 years from the beginning to now. I just wanted to touch, well, I think 2008, 2007, we're 2025. So, yeah
I guess
whatever.
so.
You know, I went to law school. I'm not a mathematician, but it's somewhere in that ballpark.
Somewhere
But
in there.
thanks for the insight, Matt.
Yeah. Kind of want to ask you what changed on the law side.
What changed on the law side is, well, one thing, it's more expensive, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to hire, on every single claim, I got to hire experts.
You didn't
Right.
have to before?
No, because there was claims that were coming through the door where they didn't have engineers on the carrier side.
So if there's an engineer on the carrier side, you have to fight it with an engineer.
Oh, I'm fighting it with an engineer.
It's almost necessary.
You have to fight it with an engineer. So you got to hire somebody like Chad Williams and
Yeah.
some of these others. Hey, look, I say it this way, and you can't go to a gunfight with a knife, right? If they got an engineer, you got to have an engineer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's unfair playing field if you don't. I mean, think about the jury, you know, and that's what we are all thinking about here. They have an engineer from Georgia Tech with PE behind his name.
Oh, he's
Right?
the smartest guy on the planet. He's the coolest guy that ever
So-
existed. He gets all the girls.
So they make toilets in space. So so it's become more expensive. I can say this though, and I can maybe only say this. I can't speak for every firm, but I feel like when I first got into this industry as an attorney, like there was this, everybody had this bulldog mentality. Everybody was like, you know, it seemed like it was the movies or the shows where everybody's just a pain in the ass.
They wanted to meet the movie persona kind of a thing.
It seemed like everything was
Yeah.
just that way. You know, and so when I was young and got into it, like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do this, you know, and act this way if I need to. And then like just, and by the way, like when I started, I was just kind of on my own type situation.
Right.
I learned just through a couple months of like, you know what, like I'm going to do it my own style. And I feel like that's evolved. And like on the attorney side of things, relationships matter.
So you're not a dick either.
No, not
Do you
not
feel
unless
like-
I need to be one.
Okay. So what do you dislike the most about plaintiff attorneys?
About plaintiffs' attorneys is that they can be full of it and they can oversell something. Oh, well, I talked to this law firm. They guarantee me I can get a full roof replacement.
Guaranteed.
I can guarantee you can get a full replacement. That's what gives attorneys bad names. I swear I will never guarantee that somebody's going to get a roof replacement.
What happens if they don't get approved? If it doesn't get settled?
That's what I'm saying. They don't care. They just want to sign them up. They just want to sign them up.
Do they get sued for it? Ever?
They're not supposed to make promises.
Wow.
I that's one part of this industry where I think there's a lot of attorneys on the plaintiff sides that are ultimate salesmen, and just want to get that sign.
How do you feel about attorneys that aren't specialized in property damage?
Stay away.
Yeah.
Stay away.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Seriously.
Why
Like, what are you
dabbling?
doing?
This is a very unique.
You're messing up case law.
Yeah.
You're not doing the right thing for the client. Like, just stay away. Like,
If they want to break into this industry, what should they do though? If this is what their career, they're going to redirect and go. This is their career. I mean, obviously, don't stay away then. But if you're just going to dabble, stay away.
let's say I was going to do a personal injury case for the first time in my life.
Yeah. You're going to screw.
Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to call a specialist and say, hey, I got a case. Only way I'm taking it is if we co-counsel together. That's how you do that. You don't take it and run with it and say, let's see what the hell happens.
How often does this happen with you? How many people reach out to you to co-counsel?
A good handful.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I do like having co-counsel relationships, and then a lot of times, honestly, I don't. It's just kind of like dead weight.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just being honest.
You can't run the same process every
No,
time.
exactly. We have our process. We like it, everything else.
It would definitely put a kink in the works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do, that is one thing that on the plaintiff side with attorneys, I do hate that. And I will sit there and tell them, like, I can't sit here and guarantee you that we're going to get a full roof replacement, but I can guarantee you that, you know, I'm going to give you 110%. And here are my statistics of, you know, winning these cases versus not. So take it as it is, but never would I guarantee. I hate when people are just put on the sales job because I've seen it and it bites them in the butt.
Yeah.
It really does. Piggybacking off of that, one thing I do dislike about public adjusters that I'd like to share.
I'd love to hear it.
And I think, I never say this, I think every attorney in this first party property insurance world would agree with me on this.
Really? Okay. I'm setting up now.
Well, how about this? 90%. Okay.
All right. Still
Is when public adjusters set expectations with the homeowners before they go to the law firm.
okay.
Like
So if a public adjuster
expectations,
say,
like
this guy's definitely going to be able to win.
like you're guaranteed,
Yeah.
you're going to be settled in 3 months. Like, let the attorney set expectations. Because I'm telling you, it sucks. They're like on the phone, they're calling the PA, yelling at them now because we're 6 months down the road and the claim hasn't been settled. We're on conference calls talking about it. The homeowner's upset. You know, it's like going to a restaurant and they say the wait time's 15 minutes and you're sitting there for 2 hours.
I think there's a lack of education for public adjusters and contractors on what is reasonable to say when you're handing this off to an attorney. What would be reasonable to say? I've had the same situation, by the way, with contractors handing it off to me where they have guaranteed that I'm going to be able to win to a policyholder when they're referring my company. So I mean, they do the same shit to public adjusters. Not everybody, but a lot of them do, especially if it's a new sales guy that doesn't know any better. But, I mean, if you have someone that you're talking to, but you've never been referred by this contractor, they just got your name, you haven't had a chance to explain to them what is necessary to explain to a policyholder before getting you involved, then how would they know what is or isn't reasonable? A lot of times they just make shit up out of their ass, right? Policyholders, well, how long is it going to take? I think I've probably done this to a certain extent with the policyholders too, so it doesn't sound like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Sometimes we bullshit our way through things. I've definitely done it. I don't do it as often as most people, but I've definitely done it. So if I'm going to bullshit my way through some stuff to explain why they want to get an attorney involved, the last thing I want to do is probably tell a policyholder that it's potentially going to take 3 years because they're probably going to say, nah, fuck it, I give up.
Yeah.
So what should they say?
When I'm working with a new contractor or public adjuster, I love having that conversation before we start onboarding mutual clients. Mm-hmm. Hey, like, you know, how, what's the process? What should I tell the potential client, you know? And it's, hey, look, right now, this is where we're at. I've done everything under the sun to try and get your, you know, as a public adjuster, to get your claim approved. Mm-hmm. They're not budging. Here's an option for you. Have a conversation with this law firm. They specialize in this field. You know, I've handled 50 claims with this law firm and they've been successful. I think you should have a good conversation with them about it, and go over your options, and you make a decision if you want to move forward or not. You know, they're on a contingency typically. I can't say, you know, maybe they changed overnight, but typically they're on a contingency. You have nothing to lose. Yeah. But these are questions that you should ask the law firm and have this conversation. That's, I mean, it's really not that hard. No. Like, and think about it. You're telling them the insurance company's not budging, you disagree with their decision, and you have another alternative option that really doesn't, you know, they're not coming out of necessarily pocket.
And do not say, we've got clear bad faith on this claim.
See, that's what I'm talking about, expectations. That's another thing. That falls in that category. Like, oh, this is just, you're getting bad faith. You're getting attorney's fees paid for, and your roof is definitely getting paid. You know what happens is I'm in discovery 3 months later, and I find out this homeowner's had 4 roof claims. Like, that's what I'm saying. You can't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They might be lying to you.
And you find out there's footage of them on the roof damaging it themselves. Like, this crazy stuff.
Have you seen that before? Footage? Oh my God.
I've seen very similar
I've had plenty of footage from contractors. One piece of footage from a public adjuster making damage on roofs for sure, but never heard policyholder. That's crazy.
And I say it about like the public adjuster making expectations because they don't, and I don't either when I take on a case. That's why I don't make these expectations. You don't know what's behind the door. Yeah. Because these insurance companies are professionals at finding things behind the door.
All right. So this is the most fair episode we've ever had. Public adjusters and contractors who stop being dicks to the opposing side. And public adjusters and contractors, when handing things off to an attorney, should stop promising the world. And plaintiff attorneys should stop being full of themselves. Is that what it was?
Over-promising, just being this,
even over-promising their clients and what they're doing.
Yeah, the salesman persona.
Yeah, you're not able to get everything under the sun. I've definitely seen that. So those are the 3 main gripes that we have with public adjusters, contractors, and attorneys on our side. See, we are fair. All right, that's enough of that shit.